I call to order this January 22nd, 2025 meeting of the North Allegheny School Board. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For our calendar review, we had an executive session this evening to discuss personnel matters. Tonight, we will have our renovation update presentation. Following next month, we will have a meeting on February 12th, our work session, and get a mid-year human resources update and a speech and language review presentation. And our voting meeting next month will be February 26th, where we will also have a school counseling program review presentation. And we are going to start this evening with our renovation update presentation. Dr. Highland.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. This is an exciting evening. As you notice, the title for the slide is Facilities for the Future. That just so happens to correspond with our newly passed strategic plan. One of our goals is to make sure that we invest in the maintenance and development of facilities, grounds that create future-ready learning spaces, reflecting our community pride and dedication to excellence in the academics, the arts, athletics, and activities. And tonight, one of the things that we're going to do is to provide the board an opportunity to provide us feedback. And we have some recommendations for the board with regard to where we would like to go as a district. As we all know, we've been through some major renovations at some of our elementary schools, and we have some elementary schools that still need to be looked at. And we also know that we have an aging facility at NAI and a facility that needs some serious work at Nash. And so tonight, the administrative team is ready to share some information with the board, gather the board's feedback, and then hopefully head in a positive direction. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Chabala and let him, I think he's starting the presentation tonight, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Highland. Yes, and he was talking about our goals in the Facilities of the Future. Goal number 4.1 of the 5 is talking about increasing the number of future-ready learning spaces district-wide. Spaces are convertible into another use and has technology in the space that is relevant for several years. So while we're doing that district-wide, we're also focusing on that in our renovations that we're looking at. So some of the recommendations for the goals of the Facilities of the Future. Considerations we're looking at is the facilities assessment needs to be identified. So at the elementary schools, we have Hozak, Ingomar, and Peebles Elementary Schools. NAI, that's structural nature, along with that's going to be a full renovation there. Nash, we had the mechanical work, a Nash auditorium, and some additional needs there. And then also at Nash, we'll be looking at parking needs. We're going to be...
I think you said auditorium, you meant
natatorium. I apologize. We'll be looking at the demographics, making sure we're staying up to date on that with growth in our community. We'll be sharing a proposed timeline for construction to start in the spring of 2027, and then Mr. Hauser will be following up with the financial implications on the debt structure and the budgetary impact. So to walk you through a little bit of history that we've been through here, the feasibility study was conducted in 2017 that encompassed 5 of the elementary schools. So it's Franklin, McKnight, Hozak, Ingomar, and Peebles to identify their facility improvement needs. And then there was a comprehensive demographic study that was conducted in 2017 as well to determine the district demographics prior to any renovations that the facility assessment identified. In 2019 and 20, we performed targeted renovations. They were successfully completed at Franklin and at McKnight Elementary School. And shortly after that, in 2020 and 21, we did redistricting in the middle schools for grades 6 through 8. And the following year, we redistricted at the elementary school levels. And then in 2022, there was a secondary assessment that was basically updated the current facility and demographics for the potential need for space at NASH and NAI. And then the feasibility study that was done in 2017 was looked at again for Hozak, Ingomar, and Peebles. It was updated in 2023 to reflect the current conditions and the priorities. There's a 2023, the high school, there was some consolidation conversations. We explored that. The district initiated exploration to potential benefits and implications of consolidating to a single high school. Among that, triggered the needs to have a traffic study done. So in 2024, a traffic study was done. And at the end of that traffic study, it was founded that we could not have a campus on, or consolidate the 2 schools into one high school on one campus. So we're keeping our NAI intermediate and senior high school structure. So here we are today, 2025, addressing the facilities of the future needs. So we're now positioned to address the remaining items identified in the original and updated facility assessments with the goal to create optimal learning environments in pursuance of the district's strategic and comprehensive plan. So, list here of all of our schools and the last time they've had major renovations. NAI is actually 27 years. This was listed differently as 6 or 7 years, but it was actually limited renovations were done then above about $6.75 million of some pyrite remediation and some HVAC work. But actual full major renovation was actually 27 years ago. Hozak, Ingomar, and Peebles was 24 years ago. Nash was 21. And Carson and Ingomar Middle School is 19. And you can see the rest of the schools on the list. So we wanted to show you some comparisons of why we're trying to renovate these 3 elementary schools. So you can see here, Hozak is on your left, Franklin's is on your right. Hozak has carpeted flooring still all throughout the building. We need to get that replaced with tiling. It's not as of a bright and inviting classroom as it is compared to Franklin Elementary School. Even the technology's at different levels. So when we're looking at classrooms of the future, we're trying to get all this updated to the best we can. Restrooms. Ingomar Elementary is on your left, Franklin is on the right. As you can see with Ingomar, it's definitely older and dated. We don't have students today have been asking for partitions between the urinals. We don't have that there as we do as in Franklin. Looking at low flow plumbing fixtures, making sure we're fully compliant with ADA standards to today's standards. And some of the other complaints we've heard from students is there's gaps between the partitions now where people might be able to see in. So we'll be looking to make sure we address concerns of those natures as well. Library. Comparison between Hozak and Franklin again. Ask your kids which library would they like to spend time in. I think Franklin would be the winner. It's much more inviting, fun environment for kids to want to be excited to be there and learning. The lighting's better, the flexible seating, the flexible furniture, do a lot more opportunities that are provided at Franklin than compared to Hozak. Hallway comparison, Ingomar compared to McKnight. This is a issue between all three other elementary schools we're looking at, is overcrowding the hallways because we don't have sufficient space for kids to put their coats, book bags, jackets, lunch boxes, all that stuff. So we're looking to address all of that. And plus it's looking at the flooring, and it's at McKnight, they've color coded by grade levels, so you know where you're at. Much more exciting for the little students to be there. Another comparison with Hozak and Franklin. Hozak's got the portable cubbies in the hallways, kind of makes it a little congested, not kind of still a cluttered hallway compared to Franklin. Franklin does have the cubbies, but if you notice, they're recessed in the wall a couple feet, so they can have all their stuff hanging there and it doesn't take up space in the hallway. Four-year comparison for Hozak and McKnight. While Mr. Herdman does a great job as best he can at Hozak with providing a welcoming environment, walking into McKnight, it's just much more conducive for events. The auditorium's right across from that. It handles the kids coming in off the bus as well. For today's needs, our three elementary schools entrances certainly need updated. Our gymnasiums. Hozak's is currently a multi-purpose. It is not just a gym, it's also the cafeteria and the stage, or the auditorium. So what was that, a auditorium, or I don't even know how you put all that together. Like McKnight, they do have this individual gym. We're not necessarily able to provide a separate gym for Hozak because it's a smaller school, but it definitely needs to see some updates. Office comparisons. From Ingomar Elementary to Franklin, it's one of the biggest things we hear from our building secretaries of just not very functional space. They probably get 20,000 steps a day with all the moving around they have to do, answering people. Not a lot of space for parents to be in the office compared to like what you see at Franklin. Moving away from the elementary schools, we're going to our intermediates high school now. You'll see some cracks in the wall. These are caused by the pyrite issues that we're still experiencing underneath the floor slab of the building. Now, these cracks in the wall are not structural in nature. Majority of this building is a single floor building. The concrete slab there's earth underneath of it. There's pyrite still underneath there. So that pyrite's still moving, floor is moving, causing these cracks here. And we also have issues with doors end shifting. We have to shave and trim doors so they still properly secure. And as you see here, talking about the pyrite, the floor conditions, there's cracks in the terrazzo floor and then some of the other flooring on the right. That was from the renovated project 7 years ago. We're still experiencing issues. Then we go to the crowded classrooms at NAI. Give all these kids credit. They do a great job with the space that they're provided, but it's not very flexible. Today's environment, there isn't really a front of classroom, and teacher could move wherever around. We want kids to have flexible seating so they can move around. If you take a look at the picture on the right, the girl in the very front in the purple, there's 3 to that table. She has to sit back with her booklet holding it. There's not enough room for her to put it on a desk. We need to address that so all the kids are comfortable in the classroom. NAI's main entrance, still very industrial looking, pretty plain. It's not very functional. It certainly needs to be renovated so it is more functional for us, provide better security, more welcoming environment, better entrance into the office, and for all the kids entering the building during the arrivals. Our windows, while they've served us a good purpose throughout all their years they've been here, it's time that we get them replaced. As you can see, the cracks along the frame that need to be recaulked. The glass block is starting to deteriorate at the glazing around that as well. Some more windows here. The one on the left has lost its vacuum seal, so it's all fogged over. Picture on the right at the circle, you can see where some of the frame's starting to rot, and it's rusted there from moisture and condensation and everything else. I believe these windows are probably 20, 30 years old. One of the 3 gymnasiums that NAI has, it's the auxiliary gym. Wanted to show you this one just because of with 1,400 kids in this student, we need as much gym space as possible. This one we have to use as a lot of storage because we don't have adequate storage for all of our current needs. And you can see, so like the middle picture shows some things that need repaired. It's not the greatest lighting in that gym. I don't know how you tell the time on that clock. Just needs a full renovation. Now this is the auditorium. Well, I mistakenly said earlier. This one was fun. I started here 6 months ago, and I walk into this auditorium, probably my first month, and I'm like, it's yellow and blue seating. We're black and gold. So I asked some questions, did some investigating. These are Hampton Township's used seats from when they did a renovation 20 years ago. They've served us well. Thank you very much for that. But it's time to get this auditorium updated, fully renovated. NAI's courtyards, there's 18 of these. It's impressive. When they were first built, I think they were very well maintained. There's lots of these. The only way you can get to them is from a door going from the classroom into the courtyard. So now they're hard for us to maintain. With the rain allowed to be entering in these spaces, it's getting into saturating the ground and saturating the pyrite that's there. And that's what's still causing some of our pyrite and floor movement issues is these courtyards. So the plans and the renovation, right now we're conceptually talking about enclosing these courtyards in. So they might become a hallway to help with the congestion in our hallways. Some might become classrooms, some might just be multi-purpose spaces. But we're still making sure that there's classrooms on either side of them. We still don't want to make sure we're not going to lose daylighting to them and daylighting to these spaces, but we're going to seal them up, dry it out, so we eliminate some of the issues with the pyrite moving floors and also make these usable spaces. Some outdated science classrooms. How we're teaching science has changed from 20, 30 years ago. All this furniture here has served its useful purpose, useful life. You can see on the right, the old countertops definitely needs replaced. We need some more flexible furniture and design these rooms to how we're instructing today. Moving to some of the outside of the building here, you see the yellow panels. Those are actually fiberglass panels. They let light in. They were originally white when they were first installed. I'll bet you these are 20, 25 years old. And I'm not sure why we have the steelwork painted green, since again, we're black and gold. Now here you're seeing some of the mechanical equipment. On the left is our cooling tower for our air conditioning, and on the right is the compressor system for the air conditioning. So if you have air conditioning at home, the little condenser unit that sits outside of your house that has the fan blowing always feels like hot air coming off of it. This is a much larger version of that. Instead of being air cooled, it's water cooled. The cooling tower is beyond its useful life. There's heaters in it that would normally help keep the water warm in cool temps. Those have not worked in a few years from what I'm being told and not repairable. So we get to the fall and we start seeing temps getting close to freezing. We have to shut this unit down for the entire season to not allow it to freeze. But you know our weather around here, it can be 30 degrees one day and then 60 the next, where we would need air conditioning in the building. We can't do that because of our current conditions. So in phase one, this will be updated and replaced. Restrooms. Well, we have been working to update some of them. We updated 12 of the restrooms in the main parts of the building, like by the auditorium And on this other side, the south side of the cafeteria, on the first, second, and third floor, we still have 6 locker rooms that need renovations and about 12 smaller restrooms. So the picture on the right is the south entrance restroom by athletics that was renovated about 20 years ago. And then the picture on the left is from one of the locker rooms. Again, you can see no partitions between the urinals like kids are asking for today, and just needs a lot of updates with new plumbing fixtures, different restroom partitions. Get up to ADA compliance. Now, moving to the pool. This is the pump and filter room for the pool. So if anyone's had a pool in their house and they use a diatomaceous material for the filter, that's what we do here, and that's your picture on the right. That's what you're seeing. But your filter system's probably enclosed. It's not open like this. Ours is open. One of the biggest concerns that I have with this is anytime Nash has a power outage, our custodians or someone that's in the building, we're staffed 24/7 in that building, has to immediately come down to this pool and shut off a series of valves. Now, there's instructions on the door as you enter this room with pictures on what valves to turn, because if they don't do that, the pool starts to overflow that filter box, and it's flooding that room. And then the picture on the left, you can see the condition of the piping. With that water being exposed, the chloramines and gases that are coming off of that are helping exacerbate the rusting of the piping. So a new filter system will be enclosed. All the piping needs to be replaced in the pool renovation. Moving to the actual pool area and deck, you'll see there's floor tile missing or cracked. We've filled it in with concrete or various other materials so we know it's safe, but here's 2 pictures of dozens of spots like that in the pool area. HVAC vents, there's some damaged tile next to that. Ventilation needs replaced, needs to be improved to help have proper ventilation in the pool area. Then you can hear on the left is the main ductwork for the pool. It's actually on the left-hand side of the pool deck, and then like the pull-up bars. You'll see a lot of rust on this. These are stainless steel items. Our HVAC unit hasn't been maintaining the humidity levels very well in the pool deck, or in the pool space, because that unit's on its last legs as well and will be replaced in this renovation. See some more issues with the pool ladder and the pipe there. They'll be addressed. And then the diving board and benches. We've got certainly got our use life out of them. They'll be replaced during the renovation. And to give you a whole picture of the pool, here's our current pool. It's 6 lanes. Most pools today are being built, they're 8 lanes. They're called competition Olympic-sized pools, and they have more deck space. So while this doesn't look horrible, but when you look at our main comparators, Upper St. Clair, Mount Lebanon, you see Upper St. Clair, they've got the full 8 lanes in their big pool, and then they have the warm-up pool on the left. Mount Lebanon, they have the big 8-lane pool. Nice and bright, it's beautiful looking. Fox Chapel, again, 8 lanes. Seneca Valley, they have the 8-lane competition pool, and then there's the warm-up pool on the backside. So moving on to our recommendations. As we discussed, elementary school improvements for Ingomar, Hozak, and Peebles focus on the increased number of future-ready learning spaces identified in our strategic and comprehensive plan. We'll have dedicated committees to thoroughly assess and document all the necessary improvements needed. And we're referencing the facilities assessments that have already been completed and updated in the past. Our goal is to ensure that all 3 of these schools are comparable to the other district's elementary schools. The renovations, we focus primarily on enhancing and upgrading buildings rather than extensive structural changes like NAI will need. So here we're looking at additional parking, playground upgrades, interior painting, flooring replacement, restroom renovations, lighting, office space configurations, new furniture, and there's a few other classroom reconfigurations that will be needed. to help better utilize the buildings, conditions we need today. Moving to Nash, the critical infrastructure there. So as we discussed with the pictures, critical deficiencies are the natatorium, the chiller, the boiler plant, and HVAC controls. That'll be some of the big focus on this phase 1 for Nash. The remaining restrooms will be looking to be updated. Some of the locker rooms will be involved as well. The proposed creation of a large group instruction space from the current locker bay area. And then we'll be looking at bidding the project separately to help maximize cost effectiveness and ensure the specialized expertise, because there'll be a specialized pool consultant. There'll be contractors that just mainly do pools on this project. And then that's what I was just saying, the second thing. And then elementary schools is more of general work, so that'll be looking at separate bids on those. So our natatorium deficiencies. As we discussed, HVAC and plumbing are both end-of-life needs or potential critical failure concerns that would impact the programming and usage for extended periods of time. If that pool would happen to flood, because we didn't catch it during a power outage, if that HVAC unit goes down, it's not going to be replaced in a day or a week. They can have a 16-week lead time. Pool deck, masonry, structural pieces are in poor condition. Capacity issues. It's a good problem to have, but there's no community programming currently available for this pool. Currently, we're using it Monday through Friday from 5:30 a.m. till 10 at night, and Saturday and Sunday from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. It's phenomenal. It's great the pool's getting used, but we're also seeing some issues with that. There's no time to properly maintain the pool. Third shift's the only time we can really maintain it, and trying to do repairs is very difficult to find that time. As we said, there's only 6 swim lanes. We're compared to 8 with all of our other comparator schools and what is the standard now for high schools. Lack of deck space and seating for large programs. The current usage, we're seeing like the 1,400 students we have in Nash for physical education. High school swimming and diving programs. The North Allegheny swim program, currently they have an estimated about 200 swimmers in that, and they have to cut 40 to 50 swimmers in that because we can't hold more in our facility. We have boys, girls, youth water polo, just for girls program and Special Olympic programs, to name a couple of them that are currently using the pool. So the natatorium project strategy. So explain, there's a specialized pool consultant will be engaged to help design and oversight of the natatorium project. And we'll also be consulting with our current coaches that we have to make sure everything meets their needs, and that they've been in other pools more than I have. I will certainly be the first to admit that they know what works and what doesn't. The construction of a new pool will be concurrent with the renovation of the existing as recommended. This approach allows for shared resources and efficiencies and opportunities for greater use of the community. So while we have this pool consultant, the specialized contractors here, it's cheaper to have them here all at one time than bring them back at a second time. The phased construction may necessitate temporary pool closures, but we'll do our best to keep this outside of the varsity swim season. So if we add the additional pool, the future programming that we're looking at is being able to provide community use opportunities for additional availability and programming for them. We'll be able to accommodate expanding needs for our existing programs as they're continuing to grow. We'll have swing space for proper maintenance of the pools. Increased deck space and seating will allow us to have larger programs and host larger events here. And then the additional locker space room will help accommodate some of our capacity now. Mr. Pizzuto does a great job, and the coaches, with managing between one sport and another. When one's in the locker room, they're up in the others, and then another sport comes in and uses that same locker room right now. And some of the other pools that we didn't share with you, they also have 8 lanes, like Bethel Park, Peters Township, Thomas Jefferson, Seneca Valley, Moon, Penn Hills, and Gateway. They all have 8-lane pools as well. So moving to NAI with their major renovation scope. We're addressing several key areas. The mechanical and structural issues, we'll be addressing them. HVAC systems will be addressed, will provide better climate and temperature control and indoor air quality. We're going to work on the existing slab conditions and the pyrite water infiltration. The cracks in the walls, door issues, window issues, those will all be repaired or replaced. Classroom spaces, we're looking to reconfigure and help maximize functionality with them. Courtyards, as we discussed, we're going to be repurposing them for more efficient use. Updating the gymnasiums to meet the needs of the current students, athletes in the community. The main entrance, as we showed in the picture of the vestibule, we'll be improving that for security, the functionality and appearance. And along with that, we'll be reconfiguring the office spaces. We're going to be updating the auditorium and then restrooms as well. Weber Murphy Fox did provide a recommendation that we should be looking at renovating this building within the next 24 months. So on that, here's our timeline that we're looking at. We'll start construction the spring, summer of 2027, and that'll be for the 3 elementary schools, Hozak, Ingomar, and Peebles, and then the Nash mechanical upgrades. The natatorium renovations and additions, that'll be included in this, and then we'll be doing an assessment for additional parking needs at Nash as well during this first phase of construction, during start of construction for summer of 2027. The following year, spring and summer of 2028, we will start NEI's major renovations, addressing everything that we've mentioned there. And then throughout this entire project, we will continue working on capital projects involving the other district buildings and fields and grounds. And then the financial overview, we're looking at a total estimated borrowing for phase 1 of $145 million. And this is subject to market conditions. Prices could change, but this is the best pricing estimates we could get from our architects. We're going to be splitting the borrowing in 3 separate issuances, and they may include a 12-month prior costs. So our first issuance will be $50 million in the spring of 2028. And another one is $50 million in the spring of 2029, then $45 million in the spring of 2030. And Mr. Hauser will go through that much more detail for you. For those of you that are visual, wanted to provide a little bit of a timeline of what things look like for phase 1 renovation. As you can see, right in the beginning, January of 2025, it's where we're here. Reviewing the facility assessment, we're in conceptual design phase right now, wanting to be going out for RFP for architect, engineer, and construction manager this fall, and then start design phase in the beginning of 2026 to help us do construction the summer of 2027. And this is the same concept for NAI. As you can see, the design phase will be much longer for NAI because there's a lot more work going on, and then the construction for NAI will be about 30 months. So moving to phase 2 for the future board considerations is coming back to Nash renovation, and there's future growth considerations. We're not providing as much detail on this because things could change between now and then. But right now, we're actively monitoring, preparing for potential growth in the northern area. We know that Marshall Township is expecting to see a growth of 5,000 residents. We have the Spang Road property, so if we see the growth needs that we could build an elementary school there. And another thing we need to be mindful of is Carson and Ingomar Middle School. It's been 19 years since their renovation, so we'd like to do a feasibility study in the next year or so to make sure we're meeting the needs of those elementary schools and addressing them in possible capital projects. So this plan acknowledges need for significant investment in Nash, also while demonstrating awareness of projected community growth and its potential impact on the district facilities. So here you can see a potential timeline for this, and please notice that the design for Nash or whatever is needed there is going on while NAI is under construction. So there'll be a lot of things happening for the next several years here. And on that note, we're going to go to Mr. Hauser for the financial end.
Thank you, Mr. Chabot. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. Those were very interesting to look at. But for the financial considerations, as Mr. Chabot said, we're looking at a phase one total estimated cost of $145 million. And that is not something to take lightly. So I really wanted to start this conversation off on where we currently are from a debt perspective, where we've been, and then where we could potentially go with these projects. So just to start off, again, where we are in the 24-25 budget, our debt obligation is $15.6 million. Net of plan con, it's $13.7 million. I like to use that net number because that's our true cost out of pocket outside of reimbursement. That's about 6.9% of our budget. The total projected outstanding debt based on our current issuances as they are now will continue to decline over the course through 2033 and onwards by about $10 million per year. So again, we're at at the end of this year, about $110 million outstanding principal. Our current debt ceiling, as of right now, is right around $430 million. So we have a lot of room in that debt ceiling. This is a chart that everybody has seen before, something that I like to show all the time. And as you can see, in the 2028-2029 timeframe, that debt obligation of each year starts to fall off pretty dramatically, which allows for some room for additional borrowings to come in. This is some raw data that I wanted to share, and I've actually graphed it out on the next page. But I did want everybody to see the numbers as well. And what I wanted everybody to notice is the historical peak of debt, or our historical peak of debt as a percentage of our budget was over 10% during these years here, and has been historically coming down. Like I said, we're at 6.9% right now, and it's been, it was as high as 10 or 11%, 7.7 last year, 8.5 the year before. Again, we're just under 7 right now. And historical outstanding principal as a percentage of budget was as high as 196%. And this is what it looks like in graph form. And as you can see, so this light green here, that is our budget numbers. It just steadily grows every year due to inflationary costs, et cetera. And our debt, the dark green bar, is our outstanding debt. The green line is our debt as a percent of our budget. And as you can see, right now, we are at 30-year lows on debt. We are, as a percent of budget, we're sitting at less than 70%, and that'll continue to decline as we pay off more and our annual budget increases for inflationary. Also, you can see this red line down below is our annual cost as a percent of budget, which has peaked at 11% and has continued to decrease. So that is historical debt. Again, we are at 30-year lows right now. We wanted to see what $145 million borrowing would look like. So we engaged our partners at PNC, who's here tonight, and we said, let's lay out a scenario. This isn't the only scenario, but let's lay out a scenario of what it could possibly look like. And the yellow and red are our current debt structures, and you can see them falling off. I think it's through 2044 is our last payment. Then we have a light blue, which would be a potential first borrowing, then a moderate blue, and then a dark blue. And that's the $50, $50, and $45 million debt issuances. And what you'll notice here is our peak outstanding principal would peak in about 2030 at $220 million. And the estimated budget at that time, what we're projecting right now, is going to be $232 million. So that principal percent of a budget is at 94.8% is what we would be projecting. And if we go back to this slide, we would be less than 100%, which is still close to our 30-year lows and right about the same percentage as when we went out for the 2019 Franklin and McKnight bond issuances. That's with the full in $145 million borrowings. Our projected debt service would peak in these 3 years right around $15.5 million, which as a percent of budget in 2030 is 6.6%. And again, as we go back a few slides, currently we're at 6.9. So borrowing 145, that tells me borrowing $145 million in this instances, the ratios are actually level or a little bit under where we're at today. Also, our debt ceiling in 2030 would be about 477 million, up from 430 million now, and we'd be at a peak of 220. We're still at less than 50% of our borrowing capacity, borrowing $145 million for that full phase one of the projects. Looking ahead, phase two, again, a lot less clarity on what phase two would be, but we wanted to say, okay, let's say we did go out and borrow an additional $80 million for the secondary phase of for Nash or Spang Road development, et cetera. How would that look? And we just said, all right, well, what if we had two borrowings, $40 and $45 million in 2033 and 2035? The peak outstanding principal would be $265 million, but our 2035 estimated budget with inflation from now, we're thinking would be about $270 million, puts us at 98% of our outstanding budget, which again, going back, is right around the levels of McKnight and the Franklin. And again, lower than our going back to 1990. And then the projected debt service would be about 18.5 million, which is about 6.8% of our expected budget. Again, that's right in line with where we're at today. And we're at 30-year lows today. During that time, our estimated debt ceiling would be 531 million. Again, we're at less than 50% leverage. These are just our ratios, our expected ratios. And again, I want to thank our partners at PNC for helping with this. This is just a potential scenario. This is not set in stone, but these are our best estimates with the information that we have today. That doesn't mean that's all we have to consider. There are other factors that we do have to consider from a budgetary standpoint. I'll never give up an opportunity to mention the growth rate or a common level ratio impact, which has had top line pressures on our budget, right? So if we go back and look at our estimates, our expenditures have been in line with our expectations. However, our growth rate has had some decline over the past 3 years, and it's causing an impact. Could there be an impact of a countywide reassessment on that? We also have future general operational costs to consider. New CBAs that come up, et cetera, that could impact projections and operational costs. We don't know if there's going to be additional state funding or plan con for construction costs. Our estimates assume that there is nothing. However, we will continue to try to find any opportunities to take advantage of from state, federal funding that we can. Capital reserve fund balance. So over the past couple of years, we have been strategically putting some funds into the capital reserve fund. We have about $10 million in there. At the moment, 6 set aside for future debt projects. So if we continue to build that up, we might have some opportunities there to utilize that to offset some of the costs. Something that will be going on that's on the board agenda tonight is the 2015 bond refunding. Those numbers don't include any impact to the debt that will have, which as it's looking right now should be pretty positive. In 2029, we'll have the 2019 that's up for refunding. Interest rates and credit rating. That's something that could impact these numbers. Interest rates are great when they're high from an operational standpoint, meaning we earn a lot of interest, but right when we want to issue debt, we'd love for them to drop just momentarily. We'll see what we can make happen. And then again, just our 5-year general fund outlook and future millage rates. This slide was shown back in the fall when we were going through the preliminary budget. And as you can see, we have the current year, next year, and then as we go out to 2030, our expected revenues start falling short of our expected expenses. And that's driven by those lower growth rates that we've had the past 3 years. Compare that, but then also looking at our millage rates. Again, this is something that we've all seen before. There are 41 comparable districts in the county. The average millage rate is 24.98. We are the 4th lowest out of those 41 districts and 20.98% lower than that county average. And if you notice our millage rates, if you look over the past 6 years, we've been at 19.1408 for 3. We had 1 increase, and then in 19.74 for the following 3. So there's 1 increase over that 6-year time frame. So our next steps in looking at all of this is really to get going on this. We're looking for the approval to request to commission a demographic study with the proposed start date in March or April. That's our really ask off of this presentation. In the meantime, we'll also be looking for grant opportunities to help with this. And it could change the timing of some things. For an example, there was a state grant that we did not get, but we applied for, and the application was to do all 3 roofs of the elementary schools. We were not selected for that, but there are a lot of our other districts nearby were to help out with their roofs. That's something that we were not awarded. But if something like that were to come up again and we were awarded, it could change the timing of that if we get help from the state. And then we'll be providing some project updates and approvals over the summer into the fall timeframe. And with that, again, with this presentation, everything that Mr. Cibola went through and the financing of it, just wanted to reiterate that we do believe that this is right in line with the facilities of the future to invest in the maintenance and development of facilities and grounds that create a future-ready learning spaces, reflecting our community pride and dedication to the excellence in academics, arts, athletics, and our activities. And with that, we are open for any questions that you may have for us or even our partners at PNC.
Thank you, Mr. Cibola and Mr. Hauser. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Dr. Gibbs.
Thank you. I want to thank you both for a really nice presentation, and I really enjoyed seeing the pictures. That helps to understand what are the issues that need to be addressed. So thank you very much for that. I have a couple questions regarding the pool project at Nash. You mentioned renovating the pool and then building an additional pool, right? And it wasn't clear to me where the additional pool would go. And also expanding locker rooms. It wasn't clear to me where that space comes from. And then you pointed out the crowded classrooms at NAI and in renovating, presumably to alleviate that problem. And it wasn't clear to me if you're talking about making bigger classrooms or using the space more efficiently or more classrooms. I wasn't sure what are the thoughts about how to do those things.
Yes, let me answer in the best I can. We're still in concept phase. So we're looking at our issues we're currently having, confirming that they're issues and we need to try and address them. So for the pool, right now conceptually, the new pool is going to be built right next to the existing pool. There are going to be some locker rooms around that could be used for both pools. And we're looking to have access to go from one pool to the other. This is a doorway going right to one or the other. That might cause for that roadway in the back to be reconfigured a little bit, but it'll all be right there in that corner of the building.
So that extra space, so that space right now is what?
There's grass, there's sidewalk,
Okay.
the water cooling tower that I showed for HVAC, that's there. So when we're redoing that anyhow, we'll put it in a different location.
I see. Okay. And what about the classrooms?
The classrooms right now, some of the talks are NAI has locker rooms all throughout the hall, or lockers all throughout the halls. If we remove those lockers, we could gain an extra couple feet. So is that something that's realistic that we can do? Or do we just reconfigure the space a little bit, the classroom with different furniture to be able to meet the needs of the crowding issues that we're seeing?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Winiger.
Thank you. Looking at the pictures, it's clear there are some areas of the facilities, like, specifically NASH, the pool comes to mind, right? Some of the pumps, the filtration system that are like, we need to do something, right? But when I look at the presentation and look at the debt waterfall, right, that we are looking at, it's clear our current debt structure in a couple of years, right? It just starts to really be favorable to the district as far as not spending as much money in debt service. Did we do or contemplate, like putting basically Band-Aids on or doing the bare minimum and what that could cost to maybe kick the larger debt expenditure out even a couple more years, right? Because after 27-ish, right? In our current debt waterfall, we saving almost, well, we could pull that back up for the exact amount, unless Mr. Hauser, how much in debt payments we're saving every year, but it's several $1 million, right? So that's where it really falls, right?
Yep. So right around where we're falling. So it's about a $4 to $5 million savings right here. That holds true for 4 or 5 years, and then it'll drop a few million, and then we're all the way out to 2036, I think, before it drops again, another 3 million until 2044, where it's ultimately done. Mm-hmm. As far as the cost of Band-Aids and doing the minimal, I'm going to pass it back to him, but I just as a comment, I think there are additional costs for ongoing maintenance that you could speak to a little bit better. That would be concerns as well.
Yes, I'm looking at NASH. The assessment was done 2-3 years ago, and they identified some of the critical needs that need to be done in years 1 through 5. We're on year 3 or 4 already of that. So we're going to be beyond that before we start renovation now. The HVAC system for the pool, I believe we're already almost on borrowed time with that. The pool filtration system, just to do a little bit of that now and then wait and redo the rest, that Band-Aid might be not the best spent money, because we're going to end up replacing it during the full renovation. Just because it's going to be all the piping, not just the piping you saw in that pump room, that's that same condition. So could we do a deeper dive to double check things? Might be able to a little bit, but we're truly only addressing the top critical item needs that we would be worried about closing a pool down or closing the school down because we don't have air conditioning or heat. Those are the main things we're addressing, and like the pool plumbing issues, or not pool, I'm sorry, restroom plumbing issues. We're just trying to address those major issues. Even this coming spring break, we're replacing the main fire alarm panel, because that's one of the main concerns. We're replacing that now just to have a capital project plan.
Yeah, and I guess, to talk about this a little more in detail, we have, again, looking at this debt structure, right? If we're concerned about the rooftop unit for the pool and say that's $1 million to put a new rooftop unit in, or maybe it's 1.5 or something like that, by letting some of this debt burn off without going for a huge new bond, right? We're basically self-paying, if not even saving money by doing some of these very small projects. I appreciate the assessment said we need to do things, but architects and engineers are paid to write those things so that they can then get hired to design new things. So that's, to your point, is we're several years into that already. But like from a filtration standpoint or whatnot, again, is that a $500,000 project or $1 million project? If we're worried about something failing right now, are we able to piece some of those things out to fix them, keep them going, and maybe push this out a little bit further? And again, in general, I think it's a net positive for the district, but the other chart that I think is really powerful is the one that Mr. Hauser had up. I think it's maybe one or two before, which shows our projections going forward with current expenditure. Yes, this one, right? And you can see very quickly our expenditures are outpacing our revenues, right? We have no control over our growth. We have no control over the common level ratio. And so if we layer on this debt, right, you're going to have to increase taxes in order to do all of these things that we want to do. And I just think that should be discussed and the community understand what this means. That we're going to have to raise taxes to do all of these things. We'll have beautiful facilities, and maybe that's the right thing to do. But I just think it needs to be said. And so that's, again, when I'm asking these questions of if every year you push these larger expenditures out, it has a pretty significant positive impact to the district.
Yep, I agree. And one thing we didn't mention in here is Nash has 30 HVAC units up on the roof. Might be a couple numbers more. They're in the early years that the architects and engineers identified that need replaced or at least renovated. Those I'm keeping off this renovation because I realize that we can renovate those one or two at a time when we do start having issues with them. So those items like that, we are pushing out to help save on the financial side of it.
Yeah, and something to note. I think we do. We're not even in the design phase yet, and a lot of these things could be flushed out during the design phase of okay, what's priority A, what's priority B, and what makes the most sense. What actually is going to make it into that debt issuance versus not? Right there could be something that doesn't, and I think that's something that we continuously look at. I can tell you though. In what I've seen in the past with sometimes kicking the can and pushing out a little bit further, the operational costs start to increase even more than what we've expected and projected because we're spending additional time on those what is it, corrective maintenance versus the preventive maintenance, and we're getting behind, and then the overtime, and we're just behind on some of that, which then calls for a larger renovation. But I do agree with you that is something that we are going to have to look at during the design phase of what is going to be the most important. And is there a way to say, okay, is it 145? That's our estimate right now. Is there anything that can bring that down? And I think that's done in every construction project. I seem to remember in Franklin, when we were going through Franklin, that there was a lot of iterations of what was going to be involved, what type of flooring, et cetera, to manage costs. And I think that's something that we would look at during these projects as well.
We're actually doing that now at the elementary schools. Hozak last year, we replaced, or the year before, we replaced the univents in it. So it was identified in the feasibility study. We knew we were having issues with them. They replaced them. Did the PA system at Hozak. This summer, we're doing the HVAC units at Peebles. So we are trying to break things out, doing them independently where we can save money, stretch out that big renovation cost where it's helped shrink the cost for the elementary school renovations.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I've said this before. We're winning state championships right now with swimming and diving, and you see the state of our pool, right? The pool doesn't make us win, right? The people are the ones that make us win. So, I mean, I know I would love to invest in the people, the coaches, right? We obviously have to have safe facilities, working facilities, right? But the football field doesn't win us football games, right? The coach and the players do. So that's just, we can't do everything, and especially with a large district and a huge budget where we're, one little tweak here and there and we have significant problems. We just have to be very mindful and cognizant of where we're spending the money going forward. And I trust we'll do that as we go.
Thank you, Mr. Winiger. Anything else? Mrs. Blackburn?
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. I'll just make one quick comment. We don't cut people from the football team because there's room there, but the swimming pool has a finite amount of room and many people have to be cut because our pool is a little bit too small. So I will make that comment. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. McClure.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. And thanks, guys. Lots of information. Help me understand next steps, because when I get to slide 59 and I see next action steps, we've got demographic study that we're voting for this evening. I understand that. However, if I'm up on the Gantt charts, I see we've got the conceptual work starting also January, which is what my understanding was, that somehow we were starting conceptual work ASAP, so that then we can get to the point where we maybe have a little better picture of what Mr. Weniger's talking about. How big is this bite? You know, we've said 45 million. Is that real? Is that too low, too high? Then you start to look at that, you get into the design phase and so forth. But so when do we start the concept design for the elementaries and also the high schools?
We're in that process as we speak. We've had the steering committees together. We've reevaluated the latest facility assessment updates from 23. We've been visiting other schools to see what has worked for them, what hasn't, what's worked best for the educational classroom. And then we brought that back and met with the building principals of those 3 schools, met with the architect to discuss, like, all right, does the past assessment still hold true? Does anything changed? And it's not just the wants, it's the need. And we're trying to make sure it's a need, not just a want. So we're trying to drill that down. So we're going to continue doing that and continue being aligned with the facilities for the future. So then we're planning for, and we're looking at doing, as you can see, pilot program. We have manufacturers from flooring and furniture reps, vendors that are willing to provide us for a classroom of furniture and flooring at like the high school level and at the elementary school level, so we can confirm like what we're looking at for facilities of the future works as expected. We'll survey the students in 6 months or whatever that we find valuable to make sure it's they're enjoying the furniture, it's working well for them, have them involved in this process as well.
So at what point do we have the consultant start to look at this? And maybe I'm misunderstanding what the concept design term is versus the hiring an architect portion. Is this Weber Murphy still working on this concept?
In the concept, Weber Murphy Fox is still working with us during the concept design. And then this fall, we'll come to the school board and ask to go out to RFP for architect engineer for the design and construction management of the entire project. It could still be Weber Murphy Fox, or maybe it could change. That'll be up to the decision of a committee.
Okay, so sorry if I'm not understanding all. So when we did Franklin, for example, we had a conceptual plan that we all kind of got our brains around. The public was fine. We're going to make it a large elementary from a small elementary. And there was some concept plans that were included renderings and so forth and started to give us some vision. And then we went out to the architect and found the architect who actually designed it. Happened to be the same firm. But so at what point do we see something that we can start to get our arms around, maybe some concept plans of what an NAI might look like with some of the courtyards enclosed, you know, how we might use that space, how we might make a large group instruction room out of some of that space. At what point do we start to get some of these big picture ideas?
Within a couple months to for sure this beginning of this summer, we'll be presenting some of the concepts to all of you on that.
Mr. McClure, if you look on the next action steps, the project updates in the summer, the board will receive an update on the project's conceptual progress, including potential rendering. So at that time in the summertime, we'll probably have a pretty good idea, knowing that that is already that ball is already starting to move down the tracks with some iterations that are going on too as well. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McClure. Ms. Hardy?
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. I wanted to say thank you so much to Mr. Hauser and Mr. Chabola for this great presentation. I really enjoyed, especially the photos that really illustrated things. I wanted to remind the board about how the focus is so different in this presentation than the first presentation we had from Weber Murphy Fox back on June 8th in 2022, when we were talking about renovating high schools and how there were a lot of lists about what other districts have done, as sort of a want list, an ideal list of what an ideal school would have, whereas this presentation and this project has changed to be much more focused on what our students need and what challenges our buildings are actually facing, and addressing those issues with laser precision. And I totally focus that I trust that there'll be a lot more focus and whittling down of things as things progress. I wanted to also ask, before anyone on this board or any board and the public is asked to approve or vote for a $45 million bond, if we could tour and see what work needs to be done, and possibly have open houses for the community so they could also come in and see what needs to be done, so we could be entirely transparent about that it's not just a wish list. It's not just we want to make it look pretty. It's we really need to address this because it's not working for students. Would that be possible?
Absolutely. I'd love to do that.
Okay. And I just want to ask, the Hosek pictures, it's been 24 years since a renovation at Hosek. Is that carpet 24 years old in those classrooms?
To my knowledge,
I mean,
possibly yes.
It's probably walking out right now. Probably growing legs. We'll find that out for you. And I hope we don't have to give you a really bad answer.
Thank you both for a great presentation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I don't think the answer can be any worse than those seats in the auditorium at NAI. Does anyone else have any? Mr. McClure?
I'll make one more comment. Thank you. I tell you, this is kind of neat, though. For the first time, it's very nice to see a long-term vision that actually we can get our arms around. This is a goal that I've been hoping to see for my entire time on the board, rather than, hey, let's do this, hey, let's do that, and then we go in a different direction and chase a different shiny object. This will, if we follow this and get this established and create a true plan, to have something that the next board who's here 6 years from now, it'll be a whole lot of different faces here who can say, wow, these guys have a plan that I can follow. So that's pretty neat. So thank you for all your work on this. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this develops and how we can leave a good plan for the future.
Thank you, Mr. McClure. Anyone else? I will piggyback on that comment, Mr. McClure. In my notes here, I had long-term plan also, which I also appreciate, and I understand how, phase 2 is not as detailed because it's so far out. And Ms. Hardy, I appreciate you bringing up that date of, June 8th, 2022. So over 2.5 years ago, when we first kind of started seeing, moving along on this project with the high schools in particular. And it dates even farther back for our elementary schools in 2017. And when I look at that table where we're looking at how long it has been since buildings were renovated, I do have concerns about kicking the can too far down the road. But I also, one of the, perks of not having PlanCon is that, our administration really has made those efforts to take things piecemeal when we can, which my understanding is, well, how PlanCon worked, maybe it made more sense to do them all at once under that method. So we have adjusted with what we've been given so that we are making those kind of considerations to push our costs out as much as possible. But I do have reservations about, I'm looking forward to getting more information so we can make those calls about, is the time right or not? And that, 7 years ago, we had that $6.5 million renovation at NAI. And one of the reasons we were hoping to address the iron pyrite issues, and we can see that they were not addressed. And so one question I have is, do we have confidence we can actually address those issues? And my understanding is the plans to close spaces in will help with that. And can you give me some assurances in that area?
I'm going to do the best I can.
Okay.
We've asked the questions to the experts. Like, is this like, it was already done once, so can we get some confidence it'll be done again?
Yeah.
So we'll be doing boring samples, targeted spots to where we know there's the issues to make sure we fully address it. We're going to be obviously very mindful and watching over it closely. And then in closing it, one of the issues everyone's telling me is you're constantly getting the rainwater and the moisture in the ground, which is helping promote the movement. So if we dry it out and close it, that just makes the likelihood of those issues going away as well. So multifaceted approach to be able to help resolve it once and for all.
I appreciate that you're asking those questions and in doing the research to hopefully not have a repeat of that last Band-Aid renovation that we had.
Mrs. Warner, can I
Yes.
comment on that?
Absolutely.
And it would be interesting to know, to go back to those drawings from 6-7 years ago, there was significant remediation done in certain specific areas. Whether what we're seeing in these pictures are those areas or unique other areas that were maybe not as bad those years ago. Because there was some fairly significant pilings and concrete. There was a lot of work done. And a lot of this too is the moisture that's under the ground. As you note, there's tunnels all under NAI, as I think most of us know. You go into those tunnels, they can be quite damp. Where that water is coming from is part of the problem, is exacerbating that. But it'd be interesting to know, is this a repeat of what was fixed already, or is this just different space?
I think with one of the pictures that was identified, some of it isn't or what was renovated or addressed 7 years ago, but then there's also issues in other areas that weren't touched. So it's a combination.
Mr. McClure, I was principal at the time when that went on at NAI. And I can tell you, I'm 99% confident it is in the same exact areas. They did bore down. They went as far as 15 feet in the hallways. I remember because I almost walked into the hole. But what they did not do is cover any of the courtyards. And so all that water continues to come in all of those courtyards. And so you have an opportunity, I think, based off of some of the things that we've seen, we can alleviate potentially a lot of problems. Number one, create more class space by covering those things. Two, we get rid of an eyesore. Quite frankly, when NAI was designed, they won all kind of awards for how it was designed and how it looked, but it became less functional and it became a problem to keep up with the maintenance. And so I think if we're able to get more space, potentially take care of our pyrite issues, and three, maybe create more corridors for kids. If you've ever been in Tiger Hall at NAI, everybody knows it's like I-95. Like it's summertime, people going on vacation on a Friday. It is crowded all the time. So having the ability to open up more spaces for kids to walk and move freely should be a significant benefit. I think the other thing too, by creating more space there, if we can address some of those things with the courtyard, is maybe the potential of having more classroom space so that we have less kids having to travel up to Nash to take courses as well. And maybe we can house them at NAI. So just some thoughts, being the old principal at NAI.
Thank you, Dr. Highland. I'm looking for, I know we had some original concept designs when there was the possibility of combining NAI and Nash, and I'm looking forward to seeing something similar here, because right now we're just seeing the kind of $45 million of debt, which is not, those charts are just not as much fun to look at as the concept drawings. And I think also maybe getting some tours like Ms. Hardy suggested is also going to be valuable to us as a board and for the community to get more excited about this kind of project. And I also appreciate Mr. Weniger's comments on, the 5-year outlook. Yeah, the growth numbers are scary. seeing expenses outpace revenues, and the CLR, I also will mention that any chance I get, that common level ratio is really hurting us. If we're going to approve an accounts payable tonight, and there are $500,000 just in the past month of refunds and reimbursements, which I assume are primarily related to the common level ratio, and yes, 100, so that $500K in 1 month. So those are the kind of challenges we're facing as a district right now. I had someone reach out to me, who noticed that in the presentation, it says that the construction on the pool wouldn't start until after varsity swim season, and also had a concern about, well, what about water polo? But when I look at the Gantt chart here, thank you, Mr. McClure, for reminding me of that, the term that I had forgotten from my college years. It looks, those pool renovations are going to be 16 months. So everyone is going to miss a swim season or water polo or season, at least one, right?
It's not clear yet.
Not clear yet? It's too early to ask this question.
Yes.
Okay, well,
It's-
someone reached out to me. I said I would ask, I've asked, but I hope you consider all of our athletic programs and all of our students who also use that pool when deciding on the scheduling. And there's not going to be any perfect way to do this kind of renovation, but I hope all of the groups are considered.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you so much. All right, I think we can move on now to the rest of our agenda. And we will start with speakers on voting items. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on a voting item? Seeing none. I would also like to thank Mr. Masidi for attending tonight, and in case we had any questions about the bond portion. So thank you for attending, and but none of us are sad that you don't have any comments on a voting item. So now we can move on to the approval of our minutes. Ms. Hardy.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. This evening, we have 2 items for board action: the approval of the minutes for the December 4th, 2024, and the December 11th, 2024 meetings, and I so move.
Second.
Any comments or questions on the approval of the minutes? Seeing none, we're ready for the vote.
Vote is open. The vote is closed and passes with 8 affirmatives and 1 abstention by Dr. Shaw.
Thank you, Ms. Weidman. Now we'll move on to our student activities report. Mr. Corona and Ms. Faber.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. The Tiger Strong Live Long Club hosts many students who continue to enjoy playing pickleball with NA Pickles during activity periods and after-school sessions. The staff is also treated to after-school workouts multiple times per week. On January 16th, the CPR Club hosted a CPR certification session for students at Nash. Each month, one of NAI's assistant principals, Dr. Mori, sends out Tiger Tips. These are short articles packed with information, advice, and resources. They have sections for both students and parents or guardians. This month's topic was positive relationships with Tiger Tips about conflict resolution, identity, communication, and much more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. Many clubs throughout the school have taken advantage of activity periods as a convenient time to meet rather than scheduling meetings before or after school. This flexibility has been well received by students as it allows them to choose how to spend their time productively. Some students focus on homework during these periods while others meet with teachers or participate in club activities. Key Club wrapped up the year on a high note by organizing impactful donation drives, including a t-shirt drive for the nonprofit Zip With Us and creating holiday cards for senior citizens in partnership with North Hills Community Outreach. Members also volunteered with various organizations reflecting a strong commitment to community service. Looking ahead, the club plans to host a winter clothing drive and expand volunteer opportunities such as working with elementary school programs like the McKnight Homework Club and People's Elementary. Last Friday, I had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Sinkoviak and Mr. Dramo alongside a select group of students. We had a very productive discussion about what students value and areas of improvement within the district. And I didn't write this down. And one thing I do want to add, there were several students in that meeting that took interest in what the board does. And I thought that was really cool. And, especially my report. And there was a student that asked where he can find the agendas. And so I thought that was really pretty cool because, a lot of students, they're not interested in what we do over here. But I just thought that was really interesting. And finally, this Friday, I'll be hosting Dr. Highland for his second student luncheon of the year. We're anticipating a strong turnout, and we're looking forward to hearing various ideas, concerns, and opinions from the student body. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. With the exception of one item, all the items on our agenda this evening, we had the opportunity to discuss last 2 weeks ago at our work session. And the one new item we touched upon in the presentation, it is a demographic study. So I propose a consent agenda this evening. Would someone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Seeing none, we are ready for the vote.
The vote is open. The vote has closed and all items pass unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Weidman. Now we move on to special reports by the board. Legal counsel reports.
We have submitted our report via electronics,
Thank-
and I would ask the board to take a look at the report. Our name of the firm now is MBM Law. And if I don't say this, my marketing director will hang me. New name, same commitment.
Thank you, Mr. Melo. Moving on to our Citizens Advisory Report, Committee Report, and our North Allegheny Foundation Report, Dr. Simkoviak.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. Our next Citizens Advisory Committee meeting will be on February 3rd. The North Allegheny Foundation will be hosting the Distinguished Alumni Awards Gala tomorrow evening. I believe it is a sold-out event, but if anybody would like to support by making a donation to North Allegheny Foundation, I would direct you to the website on the North Allegheny main page.
Any update on the Citizens Advisory Committee?
Our next meeting is on February 3rd.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Blackburn, the A.W. Beatty Career Center report.
We will be meeting farther down the month, so there is no new report. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Shaw, the legislative report.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. Included in this month's legislative report is a joint initiative between the State Department of Labor and Department of Education to address the teacher shortages in the state of Pennsylvania. $4.2 million have been earmarked by the administration to create and fund CTRA, a Certified Teacher Registered Apprentice Program to support a learn while you earn approach for the teachers.
Thank you, Dr. Shaw. That concludes our special reports. So now we move on to speakers on non-voting items. Would anyone in the audience like to speak on a non-voting item? Mrs. McClure.
I'm probably one of the first one of many that will come speak about the poll. Patty McClure, I live at 2580 Matterhorn Drive. I've only been at this podium twice in 28 years that I've lived in the district. Both times were to talk about the poll. I've been the North Allegheny Boys and Girls Diving Coach for the last 26 years in the athletic office since 2005. I've been in tough conversations where we've had to decide which organizations would no longer get poll time. That was 15 years ago. And unfortunately, we still have those conversations today as more organizations are requesting poll time. Let me highlight what a new natatorium would mean to the community. We can bring back the community swim program. I get calls all the time from the community members asking if the pool is available to the public. The bottom line, we were more able to serve more community members with the youth programs than we were with the community swim program. So it got cut 15 years ago. I just had a woman find her way down to the pool just yesterday during my diving community swim. Her doctor told her that she should swim for health reasons, and the Barrel YMCA, quote unquote, charges $85 a month to use their pool, and she couldn't afford it. We would be able to bring back the community swim lesson program. 20 years ago, we had a 200 kid swim lesson program that was very popular in the district. We're no longer able to do that. Special Olympics would be offered more pool time. My divers would be able to practice after school with the swimmers. I would be able to offer a diving intramural program year round to the North Allegheny middle school kids.
30 seconds.
The youth swimming program would no longer wouldn't have to cut swimmers, and they would be able to start earlier. Right now, 5 or 6 year old kids are practicing from 6:30 to 9, where they should be in bed. The youth water polo program, they practice after 9 o'clock. Those are middle school kids that should be in bed. We'd be able to increase the number just for girls camp. Because the pool's not big enough, we can't take more kids. Last but not least, the pool temperature, because we have competitive swimming, very cold. With a separate swimming pool, we would be able to have more people, or nicer facility. The North Allegheny Swimming and Diving community as a whole, we're really excited about the prospect of a new natatorium. We have the most successful high school swim program and diving program in the nation, and we only have a 6-lane pool to service 8,500 students. It's disheartening to watch go to our competitors' pool where they built beautiful complexes, and then we have to come back to our pool. We appreciate your interest and would greatly appreciate your vote on the natatorium when the time comes. We finally see a light at the end of a very long 52-year tunnel. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. McClure. Anyone else like to comment on a non-voting item? All right, seeing none. Oh, wait, did anyone have any announcements? None? Okay, seeing none, we are adjourned.